Next model. Okay, this is a late game model, and it's kind of important. This is called the point of no return. Someone brought this up yesterday during game 101, but let's say point of no return. This is kind of an interesting phenomenon. I'll give you a little bit of my personal dating history here, which is when I first started going on dates, I was really, really bad at it. A lot of times I wouldn't get a second date just because there was no connection with the girl. Then I got a little bit better, and there was a connection with the girl. I'd get a lot of second dates, a lot of third dates, but I wouldn't escalate enough, and I wouldn't actually get laid that much. I'd occasionally eventually get laid, but not that often. Then over time, as I got better and better at dating and I became more man to woman, I got to a point where now I think I get laid on about like 80% of my first dates, something like that. But the downside is after the first date, if I don't sleep with a girl, it's actually very rare I have a second date. Any girl who doesn't sleep with me on the first date, she's kind of made her decision at that point, and it's kind of like it's off. Occasionally I'll get a second date and follow through it and sleep with a girl, but it's much more rare. Okay? So what's happened is my overall percentage that I'm sleeping with has gone way up. The percentage I'm sleeping with on the first date has gone way up, but it's become much harder to get second and third dates, which is weird because you'd think if I'm overall doing better and girls are liking me more, I'd get more of that too, but I'm not. And here's a big part of why. It's called the point of no return. The idea is this. If you get very close to sleeping with a girl and you don't, it's gonna be a lot harder to meet up with her again. Okay, and there's a couple reasons for that. One reason is she has to think to herself that if you meet up with her again, there's a very high likelihood that she'll have sex with you. And if she meets up with you knowing there's a high likelihood she'll have sex with you, then she might feel a little bit slutty about it, right? And so inherently, she's a little like afraid of it, she's scared of it, she doesn't want to have that on her reputation, or she doesn't want to have that in her sort of self-concept that she did the slutty thing. And so she'll tend to get very flaky, she might even stop contacting you, that kind of stuff, okay? But the flakiness is a very common one. Even more common than cutting off contact is she'll talk with you, but she'll just be fucking impossible to get out again, or like really, really, really hard by comparison. So that's one big reason. The other reason why the point of no return exists is that if you bring a girl back to your place and you sleep with her, afterwards she's rationalizing to herself all the reasons she slept with you. I slept with him because he was this, 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 and this. If you get very close to sleeping with her and you don't, she leaves rationalizing all the reasons she didn't sleep with you. Oh, I didn't sleep with him because this, I didn't sleep with him because this, didn't sleep with him because this, etc. And so all of her like sort of rationalizations and after the fact thinking is going against you and making it harder and harder and harder for you to actually meet up with her again and sleep with her again. Okay? So that's why the point of no return exists. Question is, what should you do about it? Okay? Well, the first thing you should do about it is you should recognize it. Recognize when it is and what it is. Okay, so there is a point in the interaction where you've gone kind of too far. Where kind of up to that point, if you were to leave and just go about your business and call her up later, there's a decent chance you could get another date. Beyond that point, if you don't sleep with her, it's very unlikely you will. I can't tell you exactly where that is in every circumstance. I can tell you where it often is. Oftentimes it's when, say for example, you're making out and then you start fingering the girl. That's a very big one, because it's gone from like fooling around to like, oh shit, this is very fucking close to sex. Right? That's a big one. Another one is if you've done a really good job and you're making out, you're getting intimate, and she's starting to like really get physical and get kind of like animal. Right? She's starting to escalate on you. It's a really good situation because if you do it right, you're gonna have sex a very high percentage of the time. But if you somehow mess something up after that point, then it's very, very likely you've crossed the point of no return and you're gonna have a hard time getting another date because you've kind of like turned on her sluttiness, and then she knows that if you see her again, that's kind of expected, etc. Okay? So those are kind of the things that bring it up. What I would recommend is this. If you are escalating, let's say, escalating, moving it forward, and here's the point of no return, and then here's like some gap, so to speak. I don't know what a gap in escalation is, but it's some distance of some kind, and then here's sex, okay? So if you end up here, you're kind of okay. It's not the greatest, you know, you could have had better dates, but it's kind of okay. If you end up here, you're golden, all right? But what you don't want to do is you don't want to end up in this range. So what I do is when I know that I'm approaching this point, I'm very careful about crossing it, okay? So again, for a lot of girls, things like getting very physical or like fingering the girl, that kind of stuff, that can be the thing that'll cross it. So what I will do is if I'm approaching here and I'm like, I'm not so sure, I'm not sure if it's gonna go to sex now, it's kind of iffy, what I will do is I will actually stop escalating, okay? I'll actually slow down the escalation and I will either take a minute and like build more comfort. Like maybe I'll pause it, I'll be like, hey, hold that thought. And I'll go to the other room, go grab a drink for both of us, bring it back, talk with her for another 5 or 10 minutes, and then start back up with the escalation way over here and escalate back up to that point again. Because the extra comfort, the extra escalation means that when I reach that point again, I'm reaching it with momentum, and there's a good chance I'll make it all the way to the other side. Okay? So when I notice that point of no return, if I'm unsure, if I don't feel like it's going as well as it could be at that point, instead of just blindly pushing forward, a lot of times I'll be a little bit patient, I'll calm it down, etc. The other thing you can do is actually sort of give a little bit of your own last minute resistance here. Like act like you're a little hesitant, and that can get her chasing. And one of the best ways to sort of cross that chasm is to get her chasing, get her participating. So that's another thing that can be really, really helpful, okay? But what I recommend is be aware of that point of no return. Be aware when you're approaching it, and within the date, don't approach it if you don't feel you can get all the way through it. Don't get close and fail, okay? Because that will mean that the girl will very likely not see you again. The other thing is if you have a date where it's gonna be almost impossible to have sex, say you meet up with a girl. First of all, I don't usually take dates where I only have an hour or two, right? I want 4 or 5 hours, I want her for the night. But sometimes you think you have her for the night and then you find out she has another commitment, she shows up and tells you afterwards. So say you're on one of those dates, you only have an hour, you're meeting in a public place, you don't think it's likely to be very on for sex. So in a date like that, rather than escalating a lot and potentially getting to a point of no return situation, what I will typically do is I'll lay off on the physical escalation. I'll show some intent, I'll make sure there's some man to woman, but what I'll really focus on is building a maximum amount of sexual tension, but not escalating it. Because all I'm thinking about there is, how do I make sure that I have the highest likelihood of getting them out again? And how do I make sure that when I do get them out again, I'm gonna have a date where there's not gonna be a point of no return situation the next time, okay? So that's my thinking on that. This is a very important model because it sucks to miss the close ones. There's nothing more frustrating than you really like this girl, you get really close, you miss it because you got too close. Whereas in a weird way, if you'd had a worse date, you might have actually gotten it because you wouldn't have had these no return issues.